California today, we got the highest poverty rate in the country, the highest unemployment rate of all 50 states, the highest cost of living. People are shut out of what we used to think of as the California dream.
And as though the Iran war made it worse.
It's made it worse everywhere, but it's even worse in California.
Many Californians might think that Donald Trump's Iran war has had an impact on their gas prices.
Not as much, it's about half as much as the impact of Democrat policies.
But do you understand why people don't like him in California?
Of course.
Thank you for joining us.
Of course, great to be with you.
I just snuck a peek at your lining. Can we see it?
Oh no, not the light. Okay.
Come on, show us.
There's that reveal, and then you got that side, California.
So what's that telling us? You're all in?
I'm all in, but it's very specific actually. So when I became a citizen, which was 2021.
They said you have to stitch the American flag into your coat.
No, it wasn't they. It's a very specific person, which was that at that time I was hosting a show on TV, and my team made a bunch of videos from people saying congratulations on getting your citizenship, including from Arnold Schwarzenegger, who made a very nice video. I've known him for years. He said, but Steve, you've got the wrong jacket, because they had the video of me doing the ceremony. And he said, you've got to get this jacket, which is based on...
It's an Arnie one.
It's an Arnie one, exactly.
Did he persuade you to run?
He didn't, but he was one of the first people I spoke to about it.
And you're an American citizen.
Yeah.
Did you have to renounce your British citizenship?
Well, I think it's really important, actually, to use that term all in. I think it's very important that people understand that. Here, you're asking people to vote for you. You're asking for their trust that you're there to do everything you can to help make their lives better. And so for me, it was very important, actually, to make clear that I'm 100% committed.
Are you a bit ashamed of being British?
No, not at all. As I said, I'm very, proud of the country. I've had an enormous set of amazing opportunities in the UK. So it's nothing negative about the UK.
Can't obviously change your accent or your tea habit.
Exactly.
Do you think the accent matters? Do you think it makes a difference?
Well, as I sometimes say, there's been a governor of California with a funny accent before. Not that long ago. Also a Republican. In fact, the last Republican. So I think we'll be fine.
That is true. And look, it's been a massive journey. I'm going to ask you about your policy. I just want to ask you about your politics, because some might say it's a bit confusing. I mean, I remember you as the guy behind David Cameron's modernisation. I'm thinking huskies, hoodies, vote blue to go green. I'm thinking the big society.
Yes.
How do you go from there to being Donald Trump's man in California?
Well, first of all, I'm my own man in California.
Not Donald Trump's man?
For California. But I think that to be honest, I understand totally why
you get asked.
Yeah, 100%. But actually, I truly believe that if you look at the things I've been arguing for pretty much all my career, not just in politics, but in business and so on, it's always had this central idea that we've got to put power in people's hands. We've got to lift up people who've been left behind by policies that particularly have hurt working people. I grew up in a working class immigrant home in England, and I very much identify with that. That's what, we'll talk about it in a second. But for example, the policy that we're announcing as soon as we've finished our conversation here is about cutting taxes for working people. If you think back to those early years of David Cameron, a big focus and a big shift in focus for the Conservative Party was exactly that, was helping to lift people out of poverty. That was one of the changes. So I think that there's actually a lot of consistency.
Tonally, David Cameron and Donald Trump are pretty different.
They're very different, but I'm myself, and so I put things the way that I do. Everyone's got their own style and their own personality, but I do think that...
And is yours different to both?
Yeah, I'm myself, and so...
Let's talk about tax, because this is a big tax cut. You were already saying no tax, no state income tax up to $100,000.
Yes.
You're about to say up to $150,000.
Yes.
It was going to cost $60 billion. I'm assuming it's going to cost more now?
Well, we've made some changes to the plan. So the starting point is just to remember that California today, we've got the highest poverty rate in the country, the highest unemployment rate of all 50 states, the highest cost of living. There was a survey just every 2 years, United Way does a survey. The one that was last year showed that more than a third of Californians can't afford to meet their basic needs. So people see California as all the beauty of everything that's going on here and Silicon Valley and all these amazing things, and that's true. But underneath that, it's a state where so many people are struggling. That's the starting point.
So it's a story of inequality.
Well, it's a story that people who actually are shut out of what we used to think of as the California dream. A good job where you make enough to raise your family in a home of your own. We used to offer that better than anywhere else. So if you look at taxes specifically, the plan that we put out last year was your first 100 grand, no state income tax. Of course, remember, you're paying a whole bunch of other taxes.
Yeah.
We have the highest gas tax in the country, sales tax, federal taxes. It's not like that's the only tax you pay.
And now you're extending
But hang on, that tax plan had another component, which was above 100 grand, a flat tax of 7.5%. That was the previous plan. One of the things that we got in terms of feedback, I've been on the road for months, we've been doing town halls, thousands of people coming along, is that actually that 100,000 limit is pretty low. In many counties in California, $100,000, believe it or not, is defined as low income. And so there's a lot of people.
Because it's such a rich state.
No, because it's so expensive to live here.
But 150,000 does sound pretty...
Right, but
good.
But for most people, I mean, we're going to be doing the event with some working people in this facility with this paint factory. It's not a huge amount of money, and so what we've done is change it a little bit. So the new plan is your first 150 grand, no state income tax. Above that, the flat tax is 8%, not 7.5%.
And what does that cost?
So basically, that actually reduces the cost. It's about 50 billion total.
Okay, well,
the 150 grand tax free is about 27.5 billion.
And you sort of talked about believing in that under the David Cameron days, and I believe you that you can find some of that money in fraud.
And waste, it's not just fraud.
I've heard politician after politician after politician tell me they can find it in fraud and waste. I've heard David Cameron tell me that personally at times when I've interviewed him. And it's never quite enough. And there's a reality to it, isn't there? Which is, if you believe in a smaller state, which clearly you do, then that is lower taxes. But it is also fewer services. No,
because if you look at what's happened in California, a really interesting thing happened this weekend. CNN, not known as a champion of any, not particularly ideological in one way or the other. Fareed Zakaria.
CNN, neutral.
Exactly.
Don't agree with Trump on that.
Put forward a really devastating critique of California. Fareed Zakaria on his show. Everyone should watch it. It basically echoes what I've been saying all year, which is that, and this is his phrase, it's a failed governance model. He pointed out that the budget of California in the last, since 2000 has gone up by 200%. Just in the last 10 years, they've doubled the budget, but everything is worse. So the school results are worse. We have the worst roads in the country, highest poverty and unemployment, as I mentioned. So the idea that just spending more money gets you better results is obviously not true.
It obviously is the case that there have been bloated budgets around the world post-COVID, but it is also the case that governments around the world are still struggling to make those cuts. And you do one little thing and it can be really unpopular. I'm thinking the granny tax by George Osborne, or I'm thinking winter fuel allowance by Keir Starmer. You are going to have to make difficult decisions.
Let's go through some of the things that we spend money on. I spoke to a lady who runs a construction company. They do public works construction. They build roads and other forms of public works. She explained to me that it costs 4 times as much to build the exact same piece of road in California as it does in Texas. And their roads are better. So it's not that we're not spending the money efficiently. There's so many things layered into the budgets in California. The bureaucracy deals with unions, environmental regulations that are way ahead of anything that common sense would dictate. And so it's not just about reducing the budgets and the spending. Look at the number of government employees that's gone through the roof. When actually private sector employment in California, since the pandemic, is basically flat. There's no net new job growth. Something is really wrong with California's economy. Every day, I meet business people who say, if you don't win in November, we're leaving California. And you've seen that now for years. Businesses saying, we just can't do it in California. At the same time, we have the highest poverty rate in America. You've got to help people who are really struggling.
Well, like I say, spend less, get more is something I've heard before, but I guess we can't judge you until it happens. I do want to ask you about how you help the people who are really struggling, because those are not the people on 150,000. Those are really struggling are the ones lower than that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've met thousands and thousands of people, and you're trying to live on 100 grand in California. That doesn't get you very far, really.
But you've got all these. Do you want to help the people who are earning 40, 50 grand.
Of course, everyone. I mean, that's the point. But that's not the whole plan. I mean, for example, the first policy move that I made in my campaign for governor, $3 gas, because especially for working people, the cost of gas, petrol, is just off the charts. It's $2 higher a gallon than the rest of the country, even with the Iran war going on.
And as though the Iran war made it worse.
It's made it worse everywhere, but it's even worse in California. So the prices that you're seeing around the country that everybody's complaining about would be low prices for California because it's gone so out of control here.
Can I ask you, just, it came to me as you were saying that, quickly if I can. We've been spending the weekend with Iranians living in California, biggest population outside of Iran. They're pretty upset about Donald Trump's deal. They can't believe he would make a deal with the Islamic Republic. In fact, as we're speaking now, he's talking about how respected the Islamic Republic is. Are you comfortable with the deal?
I honestly haven't spent much time thinking about it or looking into it. I'm 100% focused on what I'm running for. This is a big race. It is not easy.
Those are your constituents.
Yes, and my focus is on what I can do to help them,
right?
Which is nothing to do with foreign policy.
Okay, well, let me move on then. You talked about deregulating, environmental deregulation. Just quickly wanted to ask you something I'd heard a rumour about. Did you vote Green in 2001?
I think I did, yeah.
And when Cameron came in...
I think that was something to do with the local candidate in... I was living in Kentish Town, I think, at the time.
A young Steve Hilton had a green side, yeah? You were an environmentalist.
I'm an environmentalist now. Look, it's a really deep part of California. We have the most amazing natural beauty, incredible national parks. Many people will have visited Yosemite, Kings Canyon, just incredible natural beauty.
But your environmentalism back then was about climate as well. I mean, I just was reading back a David Cameron speech from 2006. I mean, you were very much part of what he was doing at the time. And he said, going green is not some fashionable pain-free option. It will take a responsibility on business. It will place a responsibility on all of us. That's the point. Tackling climate change is our social responsibility to the next generation. I mean, did you agree then? Do you agree now?
I think tackling climate change is really important, but we're not tackling climate change in California. What we're doing is pretending to tackle climate change in a way that massively increases costs and pain, especially for working people and small business.
So how can
I'll give you an example. So as we just discussed, we got the highest gas prices in the country. I mean, $6, $7, heading to $8 gas. Why? Because over the years, in the name of climate change, the government here in California has shut down California oil and gas production. We have abundant oil reserves in California, but then there's no pipeline coming into California of oil. So either we produce it here or we ship it in. And that's what's been happening. We used to produce most of what we use right here in California and refine it here in California. Today, nearly 80% is imported. We're importing oil halfway around the world.
That's about gas prices. That's not about climate change. So drilling more oil isn't going to reduce carbon.
It is, because what we're doing in the name of climate change is increasing carbon emissions, because it's much more, there are many more carbon emissions from importing the oil than from producing it here. So it's an example of how the policies that have been followed don't actually help the environment or climate change. They just make people feel as if they do. Another example...
If you had a big rollout of EVs, it would both save consumers money and it would help.
How would it save consumers money?
Because it's cheaper to drive an electric car.
Well, no, not if you take away the subsidies when you buy them.
I mean, it's a lot cheaper to fill up an electric car.
Well, not when your electric bills in California are more than double the national average.
So do you not want to see a transition continue towards EVs?
If people want to drive an electric car, that's fantastic. We've got a big issue with wildfires in our forests in California. The last big year of wildfires, 2019, produced more carbon emissions than the previous 20 years of climate policy in California actually saved. So if we want to really reduce carbon emissions, then you manage your forest better to prevent the mega wildfires burning out of control.
Although what an environmental group would say is if you want to reduce the number of wildfires you're having, you would reduce carbon. You know, it's kind of one of the impacts of climate change. And in fact, I was reading the California adaptation strategy on this. Wildfires, droughts, flooding, you know, there's lots of things that are happening in California that they say are the result of climate change.
So you seem to be very attached to the current policies on climate change, which I'm trying to change. So I would ask you, or anyone
Well,
watching...
I'm not attached to them. I'm asking you the
Well,
questions about the critique of them.
Sure. Well, I would ask anyone who's defending them to say, what has been their impact on climate change?
Which is very hard to measure, obviously.
Zero.
But...
Zero impact. So what you're doing...
But what do you mean zero impact? Where's your evidence for that?
Well, there's no impact of the highest gas prices in the country that are crushing working people who have to drive their cars and trucks.
That's a cost of living
Yes,
argument.
the highest in the country.
Yeah.
If you're a regular
working person... But what you're really
person,
saying is, look, the cost of living of my constituents is more important at this moment in time than attempts to...
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that what's happening is the worst of both worlds. They're massively increasing the cost of living.
Yeah.
Gas, electric bills, housing costs, all because of not just the climate policy, but a big part of it is the climate policy. It's not actually helping the climate. It's doing nothing to affect global temperatures. All it's doing is hurting people. Now, there's a much better way of actually fighting climate change, which is doing common sense things like managing our forests so we don't have mega wildfires, like planting more trees. Okay. I've put out a plan to plant 3 billion trees in California. That would actually get us to the net zero 2045 target better than the current plans without hurting every working class Californian, every small business who's really struggling with all these costs. And
obviously you're trying to win over California. And just before I ask you about some of the challenges, a Republican trying to win California is a bit like a Conservative trying to win London. And I think I heard you say that you once wanted to be London mayor. Is that true? Well, it's something that I did discuss with Boris. I love London. It's my home. And you still love it, despite what the president sometimes says about it? I don't know what he's been saying about it, but it's not nice. Of course, I love London. I think it's an amazing city. But the way I'd put it is this. So California, we've had now 16 years of one-party rule. We've had most of the governors, I think, in history have been Republican in California, including in recent memory, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Pete Wilson, and so on. Ronald Reagan, famous actors. But wait, the thing that I think it's the 250th anniversary of the United States, and so everyone's thinking about what that means. And one of the reasons that America's been so successful is because of the Constitution and everything that it has enabled in terms of growth and enterprise and innovation and all those things we associate with America. One big part of that is this central idea in the Constitution of checks and balances, that you don't allow any particular ideology or political party to get too powerful to take things in an extreme direction. Now, what you've seen in California, you've had 16 years of one party running everything. All the statewide offices, both chambers in the state legislature, every big city, every big county, the state Supreme Court with a 6-1 majority. Who you'll still have to get, if you win, you'll still have to get your ideas through that legislature. What I think people are really seeing is that this experiment in what they would describe as progressive governance has really failed. Highest poverty rate, highest unemployment rate, highest cost of living, millions of people leaving California. It's such an amazing state. During Gavin Newsom's tenure, the current governor, nearly 2 million Californians net have left the state because they just can't live here anymore because it's so difficult and it's so expensive. So the idea that we can't have a bit of balance, I think actually isn't right. Of course it's right that we can have some balance, and that's what I think people are looking for, just this extreme policy direction all in one way for all this long time isn't working, and it's time for change. California doesn't love Donald Trump. You've got his endorsement, you're excited about it. You are going to have to win over people who really don't like the president. How do you handle that? Is it possible to both be attached to him in some ways, but distance yourself? It's actually everything we've been talking about. It's not Donald Trump that's given us the highest gas prices. But do you understand why people don't like him in California? Of course, and I've always... Why? Why do you think? Well, I understand that they don't, but that's not what I don't spend my time thinking about places where you can disagree. I've got a very clear focus, which is that people are struggling in California. There's a system of government here that isn't working, that we've had 16 years of one-party rule. We got the highest cost of living in the country. So you're just trying... That's nothing to do with
the president.
But you don't think it's a problem that...
Well, I'd put it more positively.
Dislike him, but he's endorsed
I'd focus on the actual substance, the reality of how that affects people's lives. And so I will say that I think it's a positive benefit to Californians to have a governor who has a good working relationship with the president and his team who are trying to do common sense things to help California.
And do you like it?
For example, hang on a second, I'll give you an example. Gas prices. And we keep coming back to it because it's actually top of the list of frustrations for people.
Is Trump going to reduce gas prices?
In California, yes, because what the president and his energy secretary want to do is expand California oil and gas production, just like I want to do. That will help reduce gas prices. The current governor is blocking that. So same with wildfires, actually. The president has an executive order on forest management, which makes total sense. It would reduce the risk of wildfires. The current governor is not working to implement that. So in all these practical ways, I think that you'll see when you've got a good working relationship between the president and the governor, it'll deliver concrete benefits.
I just want to really ask you a few questions about Britain on that. Although I would say many Californians might think that his Iran war has had an impact on their gas prices as well. But
not as much. It's about half as much as the impact of Democrat policies.
Okay. Britain, a couple of things on Britain. They've just done a really major policy. They're banning social media for the under-16s. Do you support that?
I haven't looked at the details of how they're going to go about that. Is it based on the Australia? Is it based on the Australia?
I don't think we've got the exact details, and I think they're aware of the issues with the Australian ones. But they believe you can get pretty good age verification now.
So I wrote about this in my book More Human in 2015, so 11 years ago now, and I think it's a really major issue. But I think, as I wrote then, the real issue is not the apps or the particular services; it's the screens, it's the smartphone itself. And so I argued back then that kids under 16 shouldn't have smartphones. And I think that...
Did you not give yours?
We resisted as long as possible. I think with our first son, it was 16, and then by the second...
Wow, you didn't give a smartphone till 16?
Right.
You're a better parent than me. Well, I've tried.
Well, no, it's really... That's actually the point, which is that parents want to, but the peer pressure is really strong. And so it's very difficult.
Would you ban smartphones for under 16s?
I don't think banning is necessarily the right way to go. But as Jonathan Haidt has written in his book, moving towards a social norm where it becomes how we operate, I think should be the goal. How you get there, I don't know. But
so is your youngest under 16?
Yeah. But I think that the idea that I think most parents would agree that it's not something that you would positively want. But the reality is it's out there, everyone has them, and so it's really difficult to say no. And I think that's something that a ban, I don't think, is necessarily the right way to do it. I'm not opposed to that, but I think that's a very extreme position. And I would hope that maybe just as the debate was started, a long time ago, when I first started talking about this, people said, you're crazy. Kids have to have smartphones. Now that's really shifted. And now the debate is, we don't want them to have smartphones, but how are you going to change that?
Steve Hilton, thank you very much.
Great to see you. Thank you.
You too.